Okay, so I'm going to take you through the article critique for our assignments, just so you can kind of see what the folder looks like a little bit, and then also how to search for articles, and then also get an example of what the article critique will look like. So if you're in Blackboard, don't have to pay attention necessarily to here where I have week 2 learning module, but on the left side where our bar is, you want to scroll down until you get to assignment resources. So go ahead and click there. And once you're in assignment resources, as you can see, I've put up the examples for the statement of purpose and research questions, as well as annotated sources, which is coming up. But what for now we'll look at is the article critique. So you want to click on that folder. And as you can see here, you have the instructions for the article critique. You have a section on how to find an article if you're not sure how to search for articles. And then you also have a couple of these things, the rubric and the sample. You can ignore this for now. This is from the former class. But the template is also there in case you wanted to use the template for it, as well as just some helpful hints on doing APA citations in case you need them. So we'll go ahead and just take a look here on the instructions, which you also have available to you. But basically the format is as such. So you start with your name, you use an APA citation for the article, and then you go ahead and summarize in your own words what the abstract of an article is. And in my next video, I'm going to show you, what an article looks like. So you'll get a chance to see that. But after you do that, you're going to just state and list the research questions that the study used, and then provide a summary of the overall design that they use. So what kind of methods were employed, and if it was quantitative, what kind of variables or constructs in qualitative, dependent and independent variables like we talked about in the lecture, any sampling methods, which means the methods that they use to get the participants that they needed. And then you're going to do your critique. So you're going to give your opinion of the research. So talk about things like clarity, importance of the research, believability of what was done, and then the quality of, the lit review that they did. So what do they say about the existing sources, as well as the appropriateness of the design that they used. And then you'll answer these questions. So how would you have changed the research methods? And then just as many specific pieces as possible that really demonstrate, your knowledge of these research methods, what we've discussed so far, about qualitative and quantitative research, as well as any threats to validity, which we'll be discussing in the next couple of sessions here. But so as specific as you can possibly be, the better it is. So I'll show you the example, but here you have just the instructions on how to complete the article. But let me go ahead and just show you the finding an article and then the rubric and the quantitative sample. So if we go to ERIC, ERIC stands for Educational Resources Information Center. And so ERIC is a database for finding articles that are particular to a topic of research. So you'll have the entire instructions here for how to go ahead and find articles. And remember, the best way to do it is actually just to go through the library. So here down at the bottom, you'll have a clickable link for the library materials. And so you have choices of using databases like ERIC, or if I go back here, you can also use EBSCOhost, which you'll find through the library. And so finding an article on your topic, here you'll see EBSCOhost listed down here, also another database that you can use to find your articles. And it'll go through step by step, but basically in these boxes that you see here, you can select key words that relate to the field that you're interested in. So again, you go through the library's homepage, and then you can look at all the different databases that are available. Just a couple things about different words. If you're going to try to string keywords together, you want to use terms like and or. So and really narrows a search, whereas or sort of broadens a search. So you have, things like anorexia and teenagers, so that's narrowed down to that particular topic, versus teenagers or adolescents, so you're broadening the sample of participants there. Okay, and so this will tell you a little bit about keywords and just a little bit about the process. So some terms that you should be really familiar with, you always want to look for peer-reviewed scholarly journal articles. And these are articles which are really evaluated by participants who are experts in the field. So this means that the paper that is published has gone through a significant process of review, and that experts have reviewed it for inconsistencies and any issues before it got published into that journal. Abstract, which we'll take a look at. So we'll look at the abstract of an article, and then the citation, which means just a brief description of the article, the title, the author, the page numbers it occurs on, and which journal it's published in. So if you're a student on campus, you should be all set with that. You can go in and log into the library and go ahead and get started with using the databases and just kind of play around with the keywords, start to look at a couple of different words and see what generates the most search for you. So that's just a couple of the options that you have there for that if you've never gone into a website for article searches or searched through the databases before. And then if we go back here, there is a rubric for how to evaluate this. So here you'll see kind of the point totals for how this is set up for the different sections, and then what the criteria are for grading. Just really quickly. And then this article, which you'll see here, again, from the title, you can kind of tell what type of article it is: an empirical investigation of student achievement and satisfaction in different learning environments. So this one is using quantitative methods, and this first little blip section that you see here is the abstract. That means it's going to give you an overview of the entire study. And so I'm going to just kind of give you that as an example of quantitative. And what I'll do is I'll also just show you in my own article that I wrote with a couple of colleagues an example of a qualitative article. So this was one of the articles me and several researchers in Madison, Wisconsin did. It's a special education article about the construct. If you see that word that we learned from our lecture just now, this tells you that this is a qualitative article. We're looking at the construct of pre-service teacher beliefs about reading instruction for students with disabilities. So the nice thing about this particular journal is they really label everything pretty clearly. So as you can see from this first section here, there is an abstract, right? And so the abstract is going to tell us what the overall study was doing. And here you see our purpose statement. So the purpose of this study was to complete an in-depth examination of the construct of teacher beliefs by investigating beliefs about reading instruction for students with disabilities. So this is a purpose of the study, right? So now you kind of know this is a qualitative study. You know we're looking at this construct of teachers' beliefs about reading instruction, and that we're working with teachers who were going to be teachers of special education. They were working with students with disabilities. And so in the abstract, you also hear that this is how we collected our data. We used interview, and artifact data, and we collected it for 11 teachers. That's how many people participated in the study. We also give you the duration. We tell you that it was over a 10-month period. And then we also kind of go into a little bit of the results and the implications for those results. So the results indicate here, right, that pre-service beliefs are complex. They're made up of expressed beliefs as well as beliefs in use. So here you're kind of getting into that qualitative nature of, what types of beliefs we were working with. And then at the very end, we say the future research and practice, we will provide some implications for that. So we're going to give you some ideas for how to extend this line of work, as well as we're going to talk a little bit about relationship between beliefs and teacher education. So after that, there'll be a section that says keywords. Now, these are good because just like I was showing you with the databases, these could be your key terms. So if you like this article or if you're doing something related to reading instruction and students with disabilities, you can use these keywords when you go into your database to find other articles that do just that. And then after the keywords, then you'll get into some sort of introduction. So, we use, again, a narrative hook or some sort of compelling statement here to get us started. So it's like, for decades, teacher education researchers have investigated these relationships. We kind of get you started and thinking about beliefs. And then in our longer introduction, which is what we do here, we tell you a little bit about pre-service teacher beliefs. We talk about thinking about reading instruction and special ed teachers and their reading instruction, their beliefs about reading. So we give you a lot of background research that is used. So that will be your lit review. So you see lots of little citations in here that are kind of telling you what's been done before. And that's going to be your lit review piece as well as your introduction. And then we talked a little bit about what are the different kinds of beliefs here. And then at the end, we kind of give you this, here's the overall research, right? And the questions. Oops, having a little trouble highlighting there, but anyway, here you go. So in this study, we investigated teachers' beliefs. Specifically, we were looking at beliefs which were stable versus changeable, malleable, right, over time. And then we looked at these 3 questions. So there's your research questions. So let's take a look at the research questions, since that's going to be part of your assignment. What are pre-service teachers' expressed beliefs and beliefs in use? And how do these 2 categories relate? So again, you're getting this kind of open-ended question about this construct of beliefs. So that's going to give you an indication that we're doing some qualitative research here. Which beliefs are stable or rooted, and then we look at different factors that will help teachers to understand the complexities of pre-service beliefs. So again, looking at this really construct term of beliefs gives you an indication that it's qualitative in nature. So in here we tell you that too. So there, after you do all the lit review and the questions, you get into your methods. And so we conducted, here is a keyword, in-depth, right, examination of beliefs. And we used qualitative methods, right, which are going to tell you about the phenomenon or the lived experiences of these teachers. In qualitative research, sometimes researchers also use what's called positionality. So they kind of, talk about how research should always have some sort of bias or underlying feelings associated with the type of research being done. And so we say how we approach this from a very constructivist perspective. And that goes along with sort of the theory that comes into research with qualitative studies. We then go ahead and tell you what our data was, right? Where did we collect the data? We collected it from multiple sources. We use over a 10-month period. And then we tell you the different kinds of sources of data collected. We did interviews. So we went ahead and we interviewed pre-service teachers. We tell you when the interviews happened, right? And then we also tell you, a couple of the types of questions that we asked. What do you think makes high quality reading instruction for students with disabilities? A pretty open-ended question, right? So there's lots of ways that participants could respond to that. Then we also talk about the other type of data we collected, which is artifacts. So in here we had journal entries, right? And then we also had participants do this concept map that they were doing in class. So these are just a couple examples of the data that we collected. And again, very thorough description of each of those areas. And then now you go into how do you analyze the data to get some findings? So we used coding and interpretation. It's a qualitative study, so there was a lot of themes that came up. And then the piece for qualitative that's important also is how do you maintain that this was a trustworthy or credible study, right? So one of the things you want to do is talk a little bit about, like why is this study believable, okay? And so that would be a piece in qualitative research. In quantitative, typically you talk about reliability and validity, which you'll see in the example there. And then you go into the findings. So here's what the themes were that came from all of this data that we collected. So a piece about expressed beliefs. These big headings kind of give you the clue as to what the big findings are. So beliefs in use. And then we talk about like little subheadings here, things like individualization, stability versus malleability. So those are kind of telling you some of our big finding areas. And then in qualitative research, typically you'll see some quotes. And those are sort of like the evidence, right? So from maybe an interview, you'll see, pieces like this, like you have a particular participant, and then, in this interview, this participant said such and such. And that then we kind of interpret or examine that particular quote in relation to the particular area that's used. And then finally, after all these results are presented, you go into the discussion. So what does this all mean in the broader sense of this study where we ask these questions? And then finally, you get implications and a conclusion. So what does this mean for future research? What does this mean for practice? And then a small section at the end about limitations. So what could have been done better? So when you're looking at your own article critiques, this is a good section to check out because it'll give you some of the things that you can put in your paper for, why this study didn't do certain things, right? So what is this missing? What's missing in this particular study? And then finally, after the conclusion, you'll see, some of the articles will have this declaration of, like, did they receive any financial support for the study? And then you'll get your references at the end. Okay. And so, yeah, and that's about it for this qualitative study. So that's just a little bit about that. So in terms of your article critique, you have, the example of looking at the quantitative one here to take a look, and then you'll actually have your sample of what this looks like. So this is an example. So you see the citation is all listed out in APA. The abstract, which we talked about, that beginning chunk for the research article, and then the research questions, the summary, and then your critique. And so that's the entire paper. And again, looking from this particular one, about 2 pages, single spaced, maybe a little bit more double spaced. If you double space, it will be about like 3 or 4 pages. And if you're having trouble finding articles, you can let me know. I'm pretty good at finding, depending on the type of topic, I can kind of help you get started with that. So there's that. And then for submission, you have a place that will be created in your assignments tab where you can submit it. So here where we have our assignments tab, I'll put a little place for you to put your article critique in. And again, this is just some resources for you in terms of APA. How do you cite references? So there's that as well for you.